folks. Well, Blue Star Dave put up a challenge. He wanted to know what our stories were. So, here's my story. I'm not very good at telling stories, so you'll have to bear with me. I'll start with the gardening side, because I guess that's something what's really been there all my life, although it hasn't been there at certain parts. So let's start from the beginning. I've always lived in this area, but I used to live in the next village, and that was where I was born. Now in that house, we lived for the first 21 years, and it got a biggish garden. I don't know how long it would have been. I guess probably about 80 feet, and it was probably it went like that basically. So it was narrower near to the house, and then it went wider because it was a corner piece. So I suppose at the bottom it might have been about 40 feet wide, maybe. Now one part of it was lawn, but the other part was all veg. When I say the one part was lawn, I mean we had flower borders all the way around it, and we also had a large flower border at the end. But the piece to the right of it was all veg. So anyway, obviously from a young age, because my parents had been there a few years before I was born, it had already been cultivated and that by then. So from a toddler I was brought up in the garden, and I would start off, I'd have my duties like in those days most kids did. Well, I thought most kids did. Maybe they didn't. They certainly don't these days. But my job, I would help cut the lawn, or lawns I should say, and occasionally I would cut the hedges. We have I've forgotten what you call them now. Privet, is it? Privet hedge? Anyway, so I'd help with that. Now, back in those days, money wasn't really, there wasn't a lot of money around. And what money was there was used to look after me. Before me it was my sister. And we would have holidays. We'd have a holiday each year nearly every year we went to Norfolk, and we'd also have a holiday in quite often in Germany, because my mother's German. Anyway, during those times, money was scarce and that, and so it was all done by hand. We didn't have any power tools of any type, no electric hedge cutters and that. We just couldn't afford it. We had the old-fashioned hedge shears. Anyway, when I was helping out, some of the duties what I did was picking. Now there would be things like, we had a strawberry patch, and we had that all through my childhood, and it would gradually be moving up and down the garden, because well, you may not know, but strawberries, you can only keep them in the same patch for about 3 years, occasionally up to 5, and if you leave them in any longer, the strawberries are going to start, the plants are going to get weaker, and the strawberries will get smaller. So the idea is that you get runners off every so often and just move them along, put them in the bit next to it, and then get rid of the old plants. So that's how it used to work. And one of my duties, I remember, hence my kind of interest in strawberry plants, was at that young age, was taking the runners off the strawberries, that's the young plants, and then trying to sell them. And I can remember we used to have 1 or 2 people used to come to the door or the end of the garden path because they were disabled and they couldn't get over the step into the garden. So yeah, that's happy memories there. I do remember the gooseberries. Oh, I hated picking the gooseberries. oh, so prickly and that, you know. Everything's so much harder when you're younger, isn't it? You imagine when you're, I suppose, I don't know what I would have been then, maybe 9 years old or something. You know, I'd be in there picking and that. And oh, it was horrible. So I used to hate that. But then we did have the raspberries. And I used to enjoy digging in the soil, and especially when it came to getting the potatoes out, you know, because the ground there was very sandy, and I mean really sandy. It would just blow away with dust, you know. That's how it was. And we did used to put manure and that now and again in, but it was another one of those things you couldn't afford to go out and buy it and that. You know, and if you haven't got the contacts, then that was it. You know, things were tight. You know, I can remember back then having a bottle of lemonade. As a kid, we weren't allowed Coca-Cola or Pepsi. It's my favourite drink now, but hence all the rotten teeth. But anyway, I can remember. You know, that was a treat when we had a bottle of those. You know, it was orange squash all the time. And, yeah. I mean, I know I had a much better living than a lot of people, you know, what I've heard, you know, around me, you know. We were quite lucky, mainly because my father used to work more than one job. And his main job used to take 60 hours, you know, but then he'd have another couple of jobs. He would do gardening for people. So, yeah, and he still had so much time at home. You know, I have no memories of him being away and that, even though he worked, because he worked nights and that, so that was his main hours. But he was always had the time to do things with us in the day. He used to get away with just 2 hours sleep a day. It's unbelievable how he managed that. You know, I mean, he was doing that at my age, right through to 63 when he got made redundant from that job. You know, and it was amazing, really. The stuff he used to do. So, that's really what got me interested. You know, and then there'd be things like, I remember we had our flower beds and they were I suppose they were kind of a bit regimental in ways, and you'd have a polyanther and then you would have a pink. That's a flower what I don't see these days. I think I've seen the name somewhere mentioned. I think they're coming back, but they did die out for a long time. You never used to see them around. But anyway, it was a plant. It used to be a polyanther and a pink, and it would go all the way down. And I remember the polyanthers, every so often we'd have to dig them out and chop them in quarters, and then we'd replant them, you know, and happy memories. And it was something I really enjoyed it. And I remember when I was 16 and that, when I was at school and that, and they asked, what do I want to do? You obviously don't know, but at that time I was very shy, extremely shy, probably shyer than anyone that you have known in your life. Bright red, any stranger, male or female, came to me, my cheeks and that got bright red. I could not make a conversation to anyone. And so anyway, I wanted to avoid people. That was my thing. So I thought, you know, I wanted to be in gardening. But obviously at that stage I hadn't got a driving licence, and we did apply for, we did go to places, you know, and okay folks, I'm back, sorry for the interruption. Right, okay, so what I was saying is I did apply for jobs, but they were basically out of the area, and it would have meant a long cycle ride. Now, at that time I was very much a heavy cyclist, I would be cycling hundreds of miles a week, but it was still too far. It would have had it would have meant a 40 odd mile a day of cycling. Anyway, so basically that put an end to that. The thing what I really fancied was forestry, because there's nothing like that around here. Very few jobs, in this area. So it would have meant moving out the area. It would have also meant going to college away from home. Very shy, so not an option. So I ended up staying into college for an extra 2 years. First year not knowing, in sixth form this was, not knowing what I wanted to do. Then the second year, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I was good at art. I'd passed my CSE, but when it came to my O-level, I only just squeezed. I didn't really pass it. I didn't really get a grade. Well, I got a grade, but it wasn't a good one. But anyway, my team tutor saw potential in me and decided, this was come October of that year, that I needed to do A-level art. Well, for me, A-levels, never dreamt I'd be able to do an A-level, because that's only what clever people do and that. And that's not me, I'm stupid. So, but anyway, put me in for it. Also put me in to do my English O-level again. And also computers, to learn computers. So, what happened here? Well, as far as the A-level art, the exam was the following May. So I did a 2-year A-level art in 8 months. And basically I passed. I actually ended up doing my exam piece in oils, and I'd never worked in oils before the exam, so yeah. Well, there you are, folks. Also, I ended up doing, what did I do? Yeah, that's how the computer started, my interest, and I carried that through for the rest of my life, and I learned everything I know through magazines and videos. And the only things I went to, I did some Open University courses, but I'd already knew the information. I just wanted to get a certificate. They were just modules, and so that gave me that interest in computers and art, and then when it came after I'd done my A-level, I had to look at everything carefully, and I decided there's too many people going into art and stuff, there's not going to be any jobs out there. So I started looking for a job, and at the time, in those school holidays, I'd done temporary work, and it just turns out that after I'd finished my A-level art, I got a job through my mum, who worked at the local mental hospital, as a gardener. And it was a summer job, and it was my favourite job ever. It was brilliant. It did have its incidents. Being a mental hospital meant there was quite a few dodgy people around, and although I was like just helping out with things, I did do hedge cutting with electric cutters, and I did a lot of work tidying up and planting and what have you for a few months, and at times there was some near misses. everything had to be watched, and it just took a second away, and one of these patients could grab hold of the wrong toe, and that was it. Well, one incident, I was up the ladders when the patient got hold of something. I had to jump off the ladder, and the patient was running after me around the grounds of the hospital with the shears. So that was a scary moment. Another time I got slapped around the face several times, just like that, and she going on. She obviously thought I was somebody she knew, and and then the scariest thing is when a patient tried to get after me with the what was it? I'm trying to think what it was. It was some gardening thing, and I had scary moments, I can tell you that. But it was fun. It was fun. I really loved that job. I hoped I would stay in it longer, but it was just one of those where they had school leavers in for the summer holidays. So after that, I ended up through that same I went to the staff bureau where I used to do some work for during the holidays, and I ended up getting a job in the printing, and I was in that for 15 years, and then from there, during that time I got an interest. I mean, I was just trying to think. Yeah, that fell at the time when we moved from our last property. So, to be honest with you, when we moved to this property, apart from clearing it and levelling it and doing a bit of design on the layout, I didn't really do much gardening because my job took many hours. I was quite often I was working 7 days a week a lot of the time. I did have a few years where I did do a lot of youth hosteling, and I did a lot of travelling around the UK and abroad as well. But during that period I did get an interest in keeping fish, and for a time I had 4 ponds in the garden, and I had koi carp, golden orth, shabunkins, goldfish. I think that was basically it. I think I had about 70 fish, 70 mature fish, and of course they'd multiply, you'd have loads of babies and stuff. Then I went for a life change, and I couldn't do the manual stuff, so I had to take time out and major operation, and I ended up anyway losing my job, and I went basically through depression. And it was art then what I went to. I ended up, after a year, I went and got a job. I went and applied to get on an Open University course, and couldn't afford it, so I said, you had to pay, so I said I can't do it then. So then I went to it was at that time where they were taking people on to do a foundation in art and design. So from there on I went to their interview, took my folder from school. You've got to bear in mind I left college, whatever you like to call it, at 19, and this was at 35. So I'd kept the folder for 16 years. And they didn't even look for it all. They said, yeah, you can have a place. And I got offered a 2-year foundation art and design evening class. So I went twice a week. And so I took that on. And when I got back home, get a phone call, Open University. You don't need to pay for the course. Do you still want to do it? So I ended up doing my computer courses and my art and design at the same time. And then after I'd finished the art and design, I stayed on and did visual communication, which is basically graphic design, multimedia and that sort of thing. I did that for 2 years and got my HND. I could have got a degree if I'd have done a year more, but it would have meant travelling to and fro a bit further to Birmingham, and on the train and that, and I just didn't want it every day. And I certainly weren't going to live away from home. So that was it. I decided then to start computer repairs, and no, graphic design initially, but then the businesses I was working with, they just weren't paying up. It took me ages to try and get money, and I thought, can't be doing with this, so what else can I do? So I decided to, because I was quite confident with computers, repairing and building computers, I went into doing that. And that was a success, and that's what I've done for the last, I think now, for the last, 11 years. It's got less and less, because obviously I got hit by the 2007 stock market crash, and also desktops being superseded by laptops and netbooks and tablets and mobile phones. But I still do a little bit now and again, but very few. And of course my caring takes a lot of work. And right, what happened? Well, at some point I got involved back into gardening. I'm trying to think when that was. Late 90s. Can't say it. Was it late 90s? No, sorry. No. I don't know. It might have been that similar time as the crash, 2008 time, somewhere around there, 2008, 2009. I got back involved in gardening, and I think it was 2010 we first got a little polytunnel put up in the garden. No, that was it. I got some of those really cheapo ones what blow away. I had 3 of those, and then they got superseded by a bit more sturdy one, still the cheap one. And to be honest with you, the one what's in the garden now is the original frame from that. It's just had a few covers put on it over the time. And then basically I wanted to grow flowers and that, to paint and to photograph. And we hadn't got enough space here, and at that time I hadn't got the control over the garden. It was still in the reins of my father and my mother. And so I applied for allotment, and I ended up getting 2 quarters of what a full plot would be based on, because as you're probably all aware, or you may not be aware, the original full-size plots have had a tendency to be made into 4 these days. So when you go to ask for a plot, you're getting a quarter of a plot. So anyway, at that particular time there was no waiting list, and there was a lot of overgrown allotments, and we ended up getting 2 little plots. Now we're only allowed to have 1 in our name, so 1 went in my name, 1 went in my dad's name. And what happened then, I worked on that for a few months. I lost about 3 stone in weight, and I know I'm chubby in that now, still overweight now, but I was about 2.5 stone more then. And what happened then? It wasn't enough. So I happened to get an allotment in my village here, because my present allotments, what you see on the videos, are all in the next village. But the one here ended up with having too many restrictions on what you could and what you couldn't do, and I just didn't like it, and the people weren't so friendly. It was a new plot, and I just didn't like it. To me, I wanted the social side of things. I knew what it was like at Croft. I enjoyed that, and so that was it. I gave it up. But just before I gave it up, another plot came available on my allotment next to mine, so I took that on. So I did end up at one point of having 4 allotments, whereas now I've got 3 allotments, or 3 quarter plots I should say. 3/4 of a full original plot. And that's my story, folks. It's probably bits and bobs what I've missed out, and I can say that I did apply over the years many a time to work in a garden centre, but I never had any luck. Dozens of times, I would say. They just didn't want me. So that's it. That's my story. I hope you not found it too boring. Sorry about the missing teeth, folks. I'm very aware of it, but I just can't afford to go to the dentist, or I haven't got the time to go over there, and I hate dentists, so I'm putting it off as long as possible. That's it. You'll get another video off me later because I'm filming again with Nigel. We're doing some apple tasting. So for now, goodbye.